Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Dom Pierre from Pile Up Games and R&R Games. And this is a game that will be on Kickstarter, link in the description down below, you can check that out. And prototype, by the way, everything you see here, rules, components, all that stuff, subject to change. For instance, I know they're looking into the colors of the pieces, making things darker, improving various aspects, both physically and, of course, you know, who knows what rule changes and all those kinds of cleanups that will happen. Basically, prototype. But as far as the game is basically a game about making wine. Or champagne, more specifically. It's not really wine. In fact, this title, is called not Viticulture or something along those lines, because the comparison to Viticulture will inherently be made as soon as you look at the game. Ooh, you're a wine-making game, or whatever it is. Again, not technically wine, more champagne, but it's nothing like Viticulture. Having played a lot of Viticulture, this is not in the slightest bit. The two are not remotely comparable, past slight overlay on the themes. The game here is about the actual production of the champagne. If I say wine 14 times, it's really more champagne-based. Forgive me for the mistakes there. But basically, you're trying to make your champagne. You're trying to build it, going through a process of production as you go from getting the grapes to making the actual wine at presses, to then selling the wine to accomplish your goals, to complete goal cards, to go up on the prestige track, do a whole bunch of things there, building out across the engine of basically producing, getting grapes, producing, and selling. That's the core cycle of the game. The game uses an action mechanism system that involves escalating actions every single round. You see, your core action every round is moving up one of your 6 markers and taking one of the corresponding actions, from going to the field to harvest grapes. And this is not a rules video, this is general overview because rules will take you a lot longer. But from going to the fields where you'll harvest grapes, you'll draw a grape from the bag, put it down in the field, and then create a wine tile depending on how you do that. Little details around there. You can go to your presses where you can turn those wine tiles, those little tiles, into the actual champagne that you're building, where you're going to look at a press, and again, the strength of the action is always going to modify what you're doing. The strength of the action when you go to the fields is how many times you can do that. The strength of the action when you go to the presses is how many presses you can activate. You're going to activate your presses, making wine and or barrels and or bottles of champagne. You can make be the 2 barrels, 2 bottles, however you try to mix and match. A variety of bonuses come into play to determine the strength of what you're doing. So for example, you can actually start by adding up the actual physical tiles there. You can have one of each of the 3 types, and then you add various bonuses in play, and then make your barrels or bottles at the presses. The third action is where you can go to the village over here and grab a bunch of bonuses. So you can take bonuses over here that will help you in terms of things that will modify your sales, grabbing more tiles, grabbing bonuses from the bottom of cards, running sales over there. The fourth action is how you're going to move your workers around. You start with a worker in your press, and you have a bunch of workers over here, but you're going to be taking your workers and putting them in a variety of places, from your press, which will help you make barrels, to the fields, which will help you produce stronger tiles, to the various pathways over here, which will help you with sales. As you put people down the pathways, you'll be able to lock in a larger and larger sale, which takes us to the sale action. The sale action where you can go ahead and execute a sale on any of the 4 pathways over here. We have those 4 pathways where you can execute a sale on. The way it works is you look at your workers, you see where your furthest worker is, you add that strength to the actual strength of the barrel or bottle you're selling, and you actually look at the card as well. So for instance, this particular card, if we're selling this card, this one will not accept wine from the left press. It'll add 1 to them from the middle press, and it'll add 2 from the rightmost press. Also, the art shows that it only accepts bottles, not barrels. This card over here accepts bottles or barrels. So cards define both what they'll take, as well as how they'll modify that value in general. And so you're going to go ahead and add those as well if you take the right press. You add it to the inherent value, to where your workers are, and that defines your sale value. Looking over here, you'll look at to see where it falls in the range. That will correspond with a point score for that particular region. These little tiles that will change game to game, and that determines how many points you get, as well as whether if you sell a high enough, vintage or whatever it is, you get to move higher up on this prestige track, which is a huge point modifier as you get to the end game. And that's basically the process of a sale. The final action, and again, the strength of the action defines how many you can sell. The final action is where you get these bonus cards. The way that works is the strength of the action determines how many cards you can grab. You'll take that many cards, you'll keep 1 as an actual bonus card that you can achieve, and the others will be discarded, and you'll take the bonuses on the bottom. So once again, quick repeat of the 6 actions. Produce wine over here, produce grapes, make them in your press, go to the village to get bonuses, move your workers around, conduct an actual sale, or grab bonus cards. Those are the core actions in the game. A few other general things to cover how the game works, what things to be aware of before we move into review. First of all, there's going to be these action modifiers. You can grab these action modifiers you can get to in the game. You'll start with some, you'll be drafting them in a pre-game draft, and those will modify your action in some way or another, giving you a slightly stronger action compared to other players. As you gather these go to the various actions over here, improving the action, and or these blue tiles improve the strength of the action. So if I add this over here, and I move up over here, Normally that'd be a 2 strength action, but now it'll be a 3 strength action because of that over there. Additionally, the leftmost 3 actions over here all have a cost, which results in a very tight economy of the game. These 3 actions require a cost that's equal to your lowest marker. Looking on the left over here, that's going to be 1. As I move it up, it's 1. But if I get over there, each action is going to cost me 2, and in a game where there's not that much money, you have to be mindful of that, because money is not the main currency of the game. You'll get money for a variety of small things over here, for bonuses, for moving your workers off the paths, but you have to be very mindful of your money economy, because money is going to be tight as you play. From there, you have the goal cards. Goal cards all give you a ton of different ways to earn points. You have a giant stack of them, all giving you different ways to earn points. The general sequence of the way they work is they show you something you need. They show you 2 tiers. So you could have 3 or 5 green sale cards. That's the section over here. And if you have that many, if you've sold that many, you can cash this in for 10 or 15 points respectively. So again, these will give you some sort of thing to go for, some sort of a type of card or type of anything to have. Workers on the pathways, have your presses, any number of different requirements to go for, and they'll give you large chunks of points for achieving those goals. Rinse and repeat until someone moves all the way up to the edge of a track. Once you have your marker at the top of a track, you're going to grab it, putting it down over here, grabbing 2 points, and once the markers are filled equal to the player count, 2, 3, or 4 players, that will trigger endgame, and that is basically a game of Dom Pierre. Lastly, we'll talk about this little prestige track. Whenever you do a prestige action, which is a few different ways, you can buy prestige for 5 money. Money's generally tight, so that we haven't had that happen yet. You can earn prestige through producing a level 12 barrel. You can also earn prestige through activating all 3 presses at once, which involves both being a 3rd level action and having your presses empty. Or finally, you can earn prestige by getting a 16 level, selling something for 16 or more. Prestige actions will give you these various extra tiles. You can flip over a tile and then grab one. Ooh, look at that, I'll take 3 points. And then you also get to move up this track, which is both going to give you points, as well as it's going to increase your multiplier for the number of crowns you get, which are going to show up in various cards or things. So the more crowns you get, you'll have a higher multiplier as you move higher up the track. And that's basically most of what you need to know to play this game. Which brings us to review and all of that stuff, starting off with ease of play. Ease of play is... the rules are actually not that long. The rules are fairly straightforward, not that long, although I will say this is one of those games where I don't feel I had a good handle on how to play until the second game, because the first game was mostly like, okay, great, I read the rule book, let me go ahead and set up and play, and let me check rules, and okay, great, and now I need to read that. Like things, even just things like the money economy, not realizing how tight money would be, I didn't realize until I started playing. So yes, I got the rules, but it's one of those games where you might want to go into a second dive of the rule book after your first play, and it's not that bad because the rulebook's not that long. It's just a very heavy game in terms of everything going on here. There's a lot of intermingling parts, and it's worth that second read-through. Past that, table space is very reasonable, not a lot going on as far as table space, a lot of game for the amount of table space it takes. As far as playtime, we've been clocking in closer to around 2 hours. I played this game, well, we'll get to the player counts in a second, but I've played this game at 2 and 3 players. We've been clocking in closer to the 2-hour mark for the game. I can see it creeping down to around the 90-minute mark. As players are more familiar, we tend to be a little bit more AP prone, analysis prone as we try to think through this many moving parts, and so it definitely drifted to 2 hours, a little over 2 hours for us. But again, I think that number will go down a bit. As far as player count, this is a 2 to 4 player game. I've personally played it at 2 and 3 players so far. I have not played it at 4. For myself, 2 worked fine. 3 is better, a little more interaction as far as the various things you're going for, as far as building up this board, going for goal cards, stuff like that. There's a small gameplay modification for 2 players as well to increase the goal cards as cycling through a little faster. But for the most part, I would say 3 was my preferred player count. I'd be willing to play it at 4, but especially given the slower nature of our group and going through decisions, I think 3 is the sweet spot for me. But again, 2 was great as well. From there, moving into what I liked, didn't like, and can see others not liking. Starting with what I liked, which is the action escalating over here. This is one of the mechanisms I tend to like in games in general, the idea that my actions get more powerful as I go. So the action I take in round 1 inherently moves up the track, so that the action when I take it again is potentially slightly stronger. You're going to start with level 1 actions, and then slowly be increasing those to levels 2 and 3 actions. The game actually allows for the possibility of a shorter game by having everything start 1 up as well. That's a possibility. We haven't really done that, though. But in terms of the escalating actions, it gives you a lot of sense of growth in the game, meaning you don't even have to be building your tableau. Inherently, throughout the process of just taking actions, you are taking stronger and stronger actions. And if you can get one of these down over here, taking a strength 4 action feels incredibly fun if you combine it with the right thing, whether it's upgrades or wine producing, whatever it is, or grape producing, whatever it is you're doing, a strength 4 action can be incredibly fun. The upgrading of your actions as well. These actions over here, the way you can upgrade those actions and modify them, it adds to a lot to the pathways you're trying to pursue, as the competitive advantages objectives you're trying to pursue in the game. So this whole system here is a lot of fun. The goal cards as well. Goal cards give you a lot of things to go for. You're trying to figure out which pathways you're going to go down as you try to figure out this game. There's a lot of different ways to score points, and which ways you're going to score points. I mean, they all revolve around the core cycle of selling wine, don't get me wrong, but the way you pursue your pathway on your track, that's going to vary drastically. The way players, and watching a game happen of Dom Pierre is fascinating because of the different ways players move up the tracks. There's a lot of different ways to do different things, and it does result in players choosing different pathways. So I'm going to keep moving my villagers around to start getting that escalator off the bat. I'm going to start grabbing bonuses from over here, because if I can get a few bonuses, well, that'll work for me. I'm going to lock in the gold cards, because if I can lock in the gold cards, then I know what to pursue next. Each action pathway gives you a different way to move forward, and these goals over here drive that core engine. Grabbing a few goals early game and locking in a direction you're going to be moving towards gives you a way to get chunks of points. And when you think about it, very often when you're selling, you often only get 7 to 9 points, even for a higher tier bottle. So at that point, you're looking at a goal where you can get 7 to 15 points in a range. That's a huge amount of points for the right goal, if you're able to achieve them. Some are easier than others, some are more situational than others, but locking in the right goals at the right time is a huge part of that. As far as things I don't like, my biggest thing with Dom Pierre is going to be the very, very, very tight money economy of the game. This is a game where I felt starved for money the entire time. When I was able to take an action, it was often defined as, can I do the thing that I want to do? These three leftmost actions, which are very core to what you want, they cost money. And if you ever move your markers up to the bottom level, if you ever move out of that one zone, your actions are going to cost 2 money per action, and that is huge. That is very, very, very expensive, and that's not something I want to do. And so the money in this game has been incredibly tight. And a lot of it's the maintenance of, there's some bonuses that will give you different things, some money cards over here will give you, but the core of your money is going to come from when you do a sale and when you move your workers back. But there's not a lot of money entering the game, and we all felt starved for money the entire time. Now that does result in a very tight game, and a very strategic game as to how you make that work, but it also results in it has the same feeling as feeding your people, which is something I historically have not liked in games, and I don't like that feeling that Dom Pierre gives me over here. Secondly is the core producing and selling cycle feels very mathy. It feels very, okay, great, I'm going to go ahead and turn this into that, and that will give me a level 7 bottle, and then I'll modify it up to level 2, and I'll go around and sell over here, and is that worth doing it? Okay, it'll move me to the next tier. And this is something that's tricky, because sometimes mathiness bothers me in games, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on how often I'm doing number crunching compared to the rest. But the core cycle didn't feel as cool as, hey, look at what I produced, so much as, let me see if I can make the numbers work in my favor. So not the worst. I would say the economy of the game was far more of an impact to my enjoyment as opposed to that, but something that definitely felt a little mathy and numbery to me as opposed to thematic. As far as things I can see others not liking, starting off with the fact that, I mean, it is a heavy game. You have to be prepared for that walking in. This is not a light game by any means. This is a game where everything plays off one another, and trying to figure out where you can push up an action and get the next benefit and combine that with that and move that over there. There's a lot of different things going on here. It's a heavy game, and make sure you're signing yourself up for that. And then secondly, going back to that theme note, and this doesn't bother me because I don't really care that much about this kind of stuff, but this is definitely a game where the theme is very surface level. There are a lot of inconsistencies between how things make sense versus how the game actually operates. And it could be I'm unfamiliar with certain things that would actually give it some sort of thematic tie-in, but just to give you a variety of things, just the nature of putting grapes in the field and the way you generate tiles there, the way you look at the number of surrounded fields, you don't count itself, and then if you move it to the right thing, you can get a bonus there, entirely feels completely unthematic, just the way the game works. The idea of having certain presses that will reward you for wine, like you might have a press here that gives you a better bonus when you build champagne, when you produce bottles as opposed to barrels, and you might have, no, Alex, there are actually certain presses that are better suited for bottles compared to barrels. But that bonus is actually only once. You only get that bonus one time when you do that, not if you produce 2 bottles. So I don't know if that makes any thematic sense. And then the general idea of these cards where you're going to be selling. Like, is there a concept of, well, I'm only going to take bottles. That makes sense. I'm cool with that. But I don't take bottles produced in your left pressed, and I do like the bottles produced in your rightmost pressed. Maybe there's a flavor aspect. Maybe there could be thematic tie-ins to things like that. For me, I felt multiple thematic breaks from how the theme should operate to just rules for the sake of rules. And again, does not bother me. I'm here for the mechanics first, but worth noting if you are a mechanics first person, although again, I'm saying all this feedback as someone who does not know this stuff. Maybe there are thematic integrations that totally make sense, and I'm just ignorant as to how it all does over here. As far as final thoughts rating, starting off with Dom Pierre. Dom Pierre is an interesting one because on the surface, this is a game that appeals to me. It's a game, it's a Euro game, heavy Euro, interweaving mechanics, does all that. Surface level, it appeals to me, but once I've dove into this, I don't think I'm the target audience for Dom Pierre. Now, don't get me wrong, I had a fun time with this game, but I certainly don't love the game. This one's a 3 out of 5 for me. It was an enjoyable experience, but the being starved for money really took away from my enjoyment of the game, and I tend to not like the mechanic in a lot of games, and so I don't know if it's a reflection on the game so much as a reflection on what I personally like. I think this game is incredibly clever. I think this game is incredibly tight. I think the way things weave together it results in a very, very strategic game, but also one that had me more fishing for how I can do what I want to do, as opposed to just getting that fun of the building of the game. I think this aligns more with Euros that I've been okay with, as opposed to Euros I've loved in the past. There's a lot here I do like. This escalating action track, I love that. I love that moving up of the tracks and getting those stronger, more powerful actions. I just wish I didn't feel constantly starved for money as I tried to do so. So, yeah, this is a tricky one for me to cover, because surface level, definitely interested in it. And again, I enjoyed it. I went through it multiple times, but at the same time, it's not one I'm eagerly diving into, because I think there are other games that just give me a more fun experience in terms of what I'm looking for in my Euros, as opposed to what this one is delivering. But that's basically it. As far as other game recommendations, not going to give you Viticulture. Rather, I'll say if you're looking for a Viticulture-esque recommendation, perhaps Vinhus from Italo Sorda might be somewhere up in that alley in terms of the general feeling the game gives. And then I think actually one that's not really available right now, but one that this felt far more similar to in terms of the goals, the building of your champagne and then selling it to markets. I think this actually felt very similar to Distilled for me, although Distilled is definitely on the lighter side compared to this at least. But that is basically it. That is everything. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and as always, hope you have a good one.